Well, for today's problem solver build, what we're going to do is build up a charging station to hold my daughter's various electronic devices. She has her own laptop, Switch, tablet, and this year going into school, she's going to get her own laptop from the school, which we're also going to need to charge. Unfortunately, her desk is slightly smaller than the USS Nimitz, so we need to have a charging station to hold all these things. Sketch something out here real quick, which you can't see because it's a piece of paper. But the idea is we're going to have a bunch of stations vertically like this to hold things up so they can stand vertically rather than have to lay down flat on her desk. We've got a piece of maple here that she helped me pick out. So she should like it, but of course, as a 9-year-old girl, once it's made, she will like a different finish than what it is, or possibly to paint it. But for right now, we'll go with what we've got here. So let's go ahead and get started. And the first step is cutting the boards down to length. Start by cutting the upright supports on the ends and then the internal supports. I used the measurements I had from the sketch I did to set up the cuts to get them the right length, and then went from there. You'll notice I have my full safety gear on, including my safety sandals. Don't want to accidentally get caught up in your shoes. Yeah, don't do that. After cutting the board's length, I cut off the unfinished edge as the board I had was surfaced two sides, so I did a rough edge on one edge. To join the boards, I'm basically doing some dados on all the pieces involved. I don't actually have a dado stack for this, and the little saw that I have doesn't accept dados, so I just sort of set the saw blade to the right height and the fence at the right width, and just cut off the edges as I need to. Works reasonably well. It's not quite exact though. Once the ends are cut down to accept the joint, I then cut slots in the horizontal piece to hold the upright supports in the middle. Same sort of deal, just set the right height for the blade and then the right distance from the fence, and use that as my guide to cut some, in this case, roughly 3/8 inch slots through the boards. You can see me using my delve square there to make sure I've got the right width on those slots. The nice thing about the delve square is that there is a part on it that's specifically 3/8 of an inch high. I just used that to see if that would fit into the slot to make sure it was the right width. You'll note, still wearing my safety gear, and in fact my forehead is very safe while the goggles are up off my eyes. So the plan here was to take the boards I'd cut to length and then basically split them in half using the table saw. You'll see what happens here in a moment. So let's talk real quick about what just happened there. Now, I'd like to say I did this on purpose so I can show you what happens when you try to rip with a table saw. But let's be honest, I didn't. This was just an accident, but I managed to keep it from becoming a disaster. So what was happening was, I was sawing along this edge of it, and as it got farther down, and we'd cut all the way through, it began to pinch. If you can see, these are actually already split, but it was pinching back close. It was pinching on the blade. Now, had I not recognized what was happening and stopped, this is how you get kickback. This is what would kick back and could potentially do a lot of damage to either your shop or yourself. Now, again, I recognize what was happening, and let's be honest, this is a pretty small piece, so I wasn't in any real danger with this. But when you're ripping like that, you need to either separate it, put something along the top to help hold it open, or frankly, use something other than a table saw for ripping. this doesn't fit in my bandsaw. It's a little too big for what I have. So this was the only way I could do it other than a handsaw. So actually, handsaw is what I'm going to use to finish this up and saw out that last little bit. But good opportunity to show you what happened, explain what happened, and maybe help keep you guys safe.
I'm cutting the slots with the table, so I left a little bit of wood in between the two cuts. So I just use my chisels to clean those up and make a nice smooth line in between. I tried dry fitting as I went just to see if, how everything was fitting, and if it needed to move a little bit more out, clean those up with the chisels again. Once everything's fitting together, I sanded down the whole thing just to smooth everything out, clean up any cut lines, and generally just make it look a little prettier. Once everything fit together, sanded down, I went and got a round over bit on my router and cleaned up the outer edges just to make those rounded off so they're not quite so sharp on the edges. And of course then more sanding, just to clean up a little bit from the routing and any burn marks or anything from the router bit. There's two schools of thought when it comes to finishing a piece of wood that you're going to glue up. Some will say to finish it first, then glue it together, but the risk is that the finish keeps some of the glue from adhering, or the opposite is if you glue it up first, that some of the glue spillover may keep the stain from adhering. In this case, I'm using tung oil, going over the pieces and leaving room where I'm going to actually glue them together so they're not completely stained, or I guess not stained, oiled over, and that would keep the glue from adhering properly. Did it work? Mostly. The important thing though is I wouldn't have been able to reach every place if I had glued it up first and then tried to stain it or oil it. After the oil had dried, I went back and glued everything up and then applied all the clamps. And as per usual, the number of clamps required is one more than the number of clamps home.
And here we are. All done. Holds 2 laptops, tablet, Switch, and a phone. She doesn't have a phone yet, but those days are coming, so we'll just future-proof this and build that now. There's space underneath to hold a brick for charging multiple USB from once, so it's got one plug to the wall, and then multiple USB ports out so we can plug multiple things into it. But that's what we're looking for. We'll put that up and it'll get things maybe a little more compact on our desk.